and welcome to the Fixing Football podcast. I'm your host, Martin Naylor, and once again this week I'm joined by my good friends Liam O'Meara and Luke Foley. Thanks to everyone who's been listening so far, I really appreciate it. So if you could keep up with us on Instagram, Twitter, you'll find all our links at fixingfootballpodcast.com. This week we got into the subject of Saudi Arabia and their involvement with all the transfers that have been happening over the summer and the countless links and some of the problems that it's thrown up. If I'm honest, this one got away from us a little bit. There's a few bits that are a bit ropey, and it's mainly because we had to dance around a few things. We was trying to get into it, but we need some time to educate ourselves on this a little bit more. So bear with us. We are still learning at this. This was a challenging one to take on, but I think we got some good stuff in there. There's also some bits coming out next week. The Fantasy Football League will be announced this week, so please do join us, and a Super 6 League as well. So hopefully you can win a bit of money and we can help along the way. So let's get into it. Appreciate you guys.
Right, welcome boys. Welcome Luke Foley. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
All good. Liam O'Meara, how are you today?
Very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
Nice. All formalities are out the way. Listen, Liam, we have the Bolton season is about to start. How's pre-season been, and how are you feeling about life coming up?
Well, we've won all our games except the one which we drew against Premier League Everton, so it's not a huge surprise to me because I think we are in good shape. A lot of our work in the last 2 or 3 years has sort of been with this season in mind. A lot of the bigger clubs that were in our division got promoted last year. So aside from Derby, I'd say there's no one really I fear at the league. So I'm hoping it should be a strong year for us, to be honest.
Any more signings coming in before the end of it? So who's going to be the star man this season, do you reckon, for Bolton?
I had a brief look at Carlos Mendes Gomez, and he looks brilliant, by the way. But I think the star of the season is probably going to be one of our existing, sort of more established players, probably George Thomason. I think he's coming into his own now, and I expect him to have a really good year. I probably don't think we'll drop any points all season, to be honest.
So, Luke, we've got another week or so before Premier League starts. What do you reckon of Man United's pre-season so far? This week we have had Rasmus Højlund confirmed that agreed fee. So we'll wait to see when that gets completed. Couple more maybe for Man United. What do you make of pre-season so far, and what are your thoughts going in? If you went into the season now, as it stands.
Well, it was our final game of the US Tour last night. We lost against Dortmund. It seems like we lost against all the decent teams and beat all the teams that we should be beating in that US Tour. What do you think about that, Neil?
Hilarious. So that's a great non-answer, Luke. While we're talking about Man United, I want to talk about the ownership. How close are we to seeing anything with that happen?
Your guess is good as mine, mate. It doesn't seem like we're getting anywhere with it. I think the Glazers are still stalling. I'm not too sure what's going to happen with it. It's still up in the air. I reckon it probably go into the season where Glazers are still at the club. So not sure what's going to happen there. Not looking good.
So speaking of ownership, Liam, we're going to come on to Bolton's intricate ownership model that they've had that come out earlier this summer. I want to get onto that on another episode. But Saudi Arabia, the big green and white flag that's been waved at the Premier League sort of since the Newcastle takeover went through. Saudi Arabia have come really to the forefront this transfer window. I mean, there's not a team, especially a team in the Premier League, who haven't had a couple of their players' name mentioned alongside some of the Saudi teams. Give me a bit of a brief overview of what you think is going on there and what your initial thoughts are with it all.
Well, I mean, where do you start? It's not particularly a new thing either. So, well before any interest or purchase of Newcastle, the reports were that Saudi Arabia wanted to buy Man United for quite some time.
Yeah.
Now, that didn't materialise for a number of different reasons, but that was essentially the club that they originally wanted. Now, sort of fast forward to today, I think just to look at it in the microcosm of football is not the way to look at it. It's almost an assault on sport, really. And
well, you're right with especially what you've seen in golf, tennis, boxing. There's so many things going on over there that they are using, and we'll get into the term sports washing in a bit. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It's not just football.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at high prestige sports, which don't just bring the sport itself with it. They bring organisations in contact with the PIF, which obviously is the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, which is what we're talking about here. When we're talking about any of this investment, we're talking about PIF.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, think of golf, for example. You've got things like Porsche and BMW and Chrysler, all these types of really blue chip companies that we know that come into interaction with Saudi Arabia now. And I can only see this increasing. I think it's $6 billion that they've put aside for this type of investment.
For the initial sort of round is what I've heard for, and that's just for the Saudi Premier League.
Just on that front. So, I mean, obviously, we'll get into why they're doing this a little bit later, but it's not going anywhere, and I'm not surprised to see it really take off, particularly this summer.
Luke, what transfers have caught your eye this summer? All the links to Saudi. We saw Cristiano go in January, just after the World Cup, and now he's got a whole host of mates joining him. I mean, other than the crazy Mbappe deal that's been floated around there, I think that sort of is slightly dying away now. But what else has caught your eye?
I think the Jordan Henderson deal was a massive one. It seemed like Jurgen Klopp didn't actually want him to go, but he's decided to leave.
I think he's at home at Liverpool, didn't he?
Benzema as well. That seemed to be a case where they didn't want him to leave and he's gone. But do you think that they're coming to the end of their careers and thinking maybe we can earn some extra cash? Well, not extra cash, a lot of cash.
They clearly are. The majority of players that they're signing from Europe are over 30. I can only think of Ruben Neves off the top of my head, where you think, well, all right, this guy's really in his prime. What his prime age is his career.
Jota as well.
Jota from Celtic, yeah. Right. So the Henderson one, that sticks out mainly because of the wages that he's being offered. I mean, it's the reported $700,000 a week one that stuck out. What do you think of everything else that's gone along with the Henderson deal? I mean, there's been the massive LGBTQ plus sort of backlash because he's been so outspoken in the past. What's your view on him taking that deal, knowing what he knows going in?
I think it's very easy to excuse me. Sorry. I think it's very easy to criticise Jordan Henderson because obviously he has been outspoken on those issues in the past, and rightfully so. And it is going to essentially a country where, you know, where it's not tolerated. So, and even the announcement video, I mean, only they will know if they did it on purpose, but it didn't look great in terms of what they did with the rainbow armband.
Yeah, they traded it out.
Yeah, so I mean, only they'll know if they did that on purpose. But I think it's very hard to criticise someone when they get that kind of money put in front of them. I mean, what we're talking, £700,000 a week. He's now the fourth highest paid player in the world.
Yeah, and one of the more highest paid athletes in the world. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't begrudge, I don't hate on Jordan Henderson specifically, but when you're talking about people's market value, he's nowhere near top 10 in terms of what you'd rate in terms of ability, crossed with like a potential transfer fee or what they should be earning. He's never been
probably
cost.
getting paid 10 times his market value now at his age.
Yeah.
I'd say. If he went to a Premier League club, he'd probably get in around 70,000 a week, I reckon.
Do you think, though, obviously with the 2 new signings in midfield Liverpool's just done, he's kind of seeing the writing on the wall for his playing time, and he's just obviously this offer's come up and gone. Fair enough, they're offers him.
Definitely true. No, that's definitely true. But that isn't. That's a separate issue. I think he wouldn't have been short on clubs, Jordan Henderson. I don't think.
No. Yeah, I don't think anyone would have seen him outside of the Premier League come next season. He could have easily stayed at Liverpool for another season and started 15 games.
So I think it's hard with that money put in front of him. It is. It's ridiculous money.
So we're getting into the realm that the term hypocrite gets thrown around a lot when we're talking about Saudi Arabia or the PIF investment into the football league there because of their human rights record, their current laws on with regards to human rights, outlawing any homosexuality, the differences in socially with men and women. And someone like Jordan Henderson has been massively outspoken in the past, where whether he's done that because he's Liverpool's captain, it's the thing to do, or he does have a super strong belief on that. Either way, that's the message that he's always put across as that sort of spokesman for an English player, for a Premier League player, as a captain of a top Premier League club. To then go and accept money from a country like that. So what are we saying about the accusations that are being thrown at players who are taking that money?
I think they're fair, but again, like we said before, if that money's put in front of someone, you're going to take it. It's especially some players at the end of their career. It's a no-brainer, really.
We're not talking about someone being dragged out of the depths of League Two and being handed a life-changing amount of money. We're talking about people who are already multimillionaires.
Well, that's not all. That's. I mean, Max Power at Wigan, he's there now, isn't he? Second division.
Is he really?
Very good money. Yeah, going playing with Robbie Fowler in the second division. So there's money and then there's money, isn't there? I mean, you're talking the kind of wealth that not only means that your kids will never work a day in their life, that their kids will probably never work in a day in life either.
Yeah, it's generational wealth.
Your whole family. Now, you probably could essentially see someone like John Henderson donate some of this money to certain causes, and maybe that will help. But I think I've seen the term people call him a hypocrite, and he is getting criticised, and rightfully so. But again, I just come back to the fact that £700,000 a week.
Yeah, it's mental.
To play football.
My view is that it's all well and good having these morals until that amount of money is put in front of you, and it's how much are your morals worth, I guess. When no one's saying that John Henderson's a bad person. I know that's the way he likes to be spun, but I guess you don't know until you're in that situation what you're going to do.
I have a feeling what I would do.
Why will a player go to Saudi Arabia, Luke? Is it only for the money, or is it a project?
It's only for the money. That is the only reason. And I know Cristiano says this is going to be the 5th best league in the world. Nonsense. It's solely for the money. There's no other reason it can't be not for the money.
Is the Saudi League just the Chinese League version 2? Because we saw this a few years ago when we had big players from across Europe, some from the Premier League, go over to China, earn ridiculous amounts of money. I remember Asamoah Gyan being the highest paid player in the world over Cristiano and Messi. What do you think?
Well, I think this has more backing, and I think, especially with it obviously fell apart over in China. I think this is not going to fall apart, and this is not going away. This is just going to get bigger and bigger. But personally, I don't think it will be the case where the Saudi League will be the fifth best league in the world. I don't think it'll ever get to that. Obviously, with the European competitions involved, that's where, if you want to prove yourself as a player, that's where you want to be.
Well, who stands in the way at the moment? What we're talking, the Ligue 1, the French League, the Dutch League?
Well, Champions League.
No, in terms of the fifth best league in the world. Who's standing in the way? They already have as many stars and Instagram followers and God knows what else more than the majority of leagues in Europe. But what do they need to overcome? Liam, what do the Saudi League need to do to get to this point that Cristiano's mentioning?
Keep investing.
Keep investing. Mine is, well, my initial thought is to secure a TV deal, a big one, to get an ESPN.
I think that will happen. I think they've attracted enough stars now for that to happen. I do agree. I mean, obviously, they're going for the money. Like, just sort of coming back to the original question. But there are quite a few players of the Muslim faith that are going there as well. And maybe it provides a unique opportunity for them to compete at a very high level and live in a Muslim country. There will be an element of that. Now, I don't want to say that it is only, that it is only that, because I do strongly believe that the money is the motivating factor. But I do think there is an element of that as well. But in terms of what they can do, the difference with the China deal, the Chinese league, was that sort of fell apart because the government wasn't really on board with that. So they essentially taxed transfers at 100%. So if they were to buy Harry Kane for 80 million, they would be taxed 80 million as well by the Chinese government to make that transfer happen. That's kind of why that fell apart. The difference here is that this is very much in the PIF and the government are not officially the same, if you believe Newcastle, but they are very much in line with what they want to do. Wink. Also, they're highly concentrating these players into 4 or 5 clubs at the top of the league. So essentially what you're actually getting is not clubs like maybe in the MLS where you have like your marquee players or non-domestic players and 3 or 4 a team, almost like you're having cricket tournaments. What you're actually getting is probably in the next sort of 18 months, 2 years, where you've got 4 highly competitive sides at the top end of the Saudi League, which will then be competing in Asian Champions Leagues, Club World Championships. And that is the direction where Saudi can succeed because they're not hindered by any European financial fair play.
What about the Club World Cup? You mentioned you want to touch on that a little bit. Do you think that's their route into the mainstream?
Yes, 100%.
How do you see that changing? I know there's been some proposals about change to it already, making it a lot bigger. Do you think that's just how they get their influence in across the market?
How do you think it'll change? What do you think will change people's views on it at the top of football?
Oh, at the top of football will be the super sincere and underwhelming investment that the brown envelopes will carry over the table.
This is it. So it's very much on the table. I mean, does it not? I mean, everyone sort of turns their nose up at it, but does for example, you look at the Euros, Copa America, these types of things. Nowhere else has that.
Yeah.
So it's only like X amount of the world that is having that every 2 years. What if you also had a Club World Cup that was truly global and brought these Saudi Arabian teams and teams from Australia or Japan, where there's some strong sides as well. South American teams that love playing against these European clubs. What if you brought that to the table every 4 years or 2 years? Or at winter, which the Winter World Cup has shown that you can do. I think the possibilities of this are endless, and I think if Saudi continue to throw the weight behind it that they are, there's no reason why we won't see it. I mean, look at La Liga. Is it the Super Cup that takes place every year there now in Saudi? Is it Saudi? I think it's Saudi.
Yeah, I think you're right, yeah.
So why not?
Luke, what do you think about a Club World Cup sponsored by PIF? How does that sound?
Depends on what direction we're going in it. From what Liam was saying, it looks like, and how it's going, I think that's the inevitable.
Can Saudi's investment keep this up? I mean, I'm not talking about how much money that they have left to spend. It's a never-ending pot, trillions.
Well, let's get into this then. So let's get into why are they doing it? Why invest this money into football? Surely they've got better things to be spending it on. Surely there are more commercially viable things than giving Jordan Henderson God's money to play football, you know, in Saudi Arabia. Why are we doing it? So,
Liam, explain sports washing to me.
Well, I don't. Right, I'll come back to sports washing. What I'll do is I'll talk about why do this if you're Saudi Arabia from an actual perspective.
Okay.
Saudi Arabia is a country that relies on fossil fuels. That is essentially how they've made their money since man discovered oil. So the direction of travel in terms of the world is that a lot of the world wants to be carbon neutral in the next X amount of years. So if you're a country that relies purely on oil, how do you survive?
When it runs out?
Well, not even if it runs out, when no one wants to buy it anymore.
You tell me. I'm not here for your questions.
You have to diversify. So in business, when you diversify your portfolio, it means you move into other industries. You become influential in other ways. So you become a more friendly person at the table. So you create these new relationships. You move into new areas of business and essentially create new opportunities. You welcome new opportunities to Saudi Arabia. You make it a more welcoming place, a more, what's the word I'm looking for? Desired place to visit.
Yeah, that's the word.
And work in other industries, finance, these types of things. So if you look on things like the PIF's own vision, the 2030 vision, it will talk about sport being a tiny part of the plan. A drop in the ocean in terms of what they're actually trying to do. So they have to do this. Now, when we talk about sports washing, that's a very different thing. So the idea of...
Wait, before you go, because I'm aware of you just talking all alone on this podcast. My idea of sports washing is they are using sport, glorifying it from their end, to brush over their poor humanitarian efforts, laws, regime. That's how I understand it. Am I close to the mark here?
I think that's not a terrible way of describing it with regards to what they're trying to do. I think the term sports washing is something that you hear quite a lot when you're talking about particularly things like Newcastle and how that has come. But I think essentially, yeah, it's the idea of washing comes from the idea of launder, to clean their image essentially on the global stage. Using sport to do so. Sport's a great vehicle to show the best in people and a country. And Saudi Arabia, traditionally, in terms of the Arab world, has been quite a strong footballing country. It's not they have competed well at World Cups. They have competed well in tournaments. They are not complete football nobodies. That there is football is part of Saudi Arabian culture. So to throw this money behind it, to bring them to the table and for people to see the best of Saudi Arabia is certainly part of the plan, but only in the same way that it is with golf, it is with boxing. Essentially, you're seeing the best of it in really high amount of people that will be watching these types of things. I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo on his own brought in numerous deals. I think Sky had the back end of the Saudi League last year. After Ronaldo signed, I think you could get...
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So don't be surprised if it's on Sky again next year. But yeah, it displays the best of Saudi Arabia or other countries that may want to partake in this type of activity.
Luke, what's the current state of the Saudi Pro League before we delve into how they are going to get our market share of what's going on? What's it currently looking like, aside from each team having one or two superstars?
What's it looking like, did you say?
Yeah.
Well, as you said, it seems like there's only 4 teams that are spending big money.
The PIF own the share of all the clubs, right? Or the majority of the clubs.
Sure, it's all. Is it all of them?
From what I understood, it was. And for the sake of this podcast, I'm going to say it is.
Okay, fair enough.
From what I can see, there's crowds of up to 13,000 for each home game. So we're not looking at a massive, like an MLS style crowds what we've seen in some of the pre-season matches. I know we're talking about a lot more developed worldwide brands, but look, do you think that's where Saudi are going to be aiming?
Yeah, but it's early stages, the Saudi, but it's progressing fast. So they're nowhere near MLS kind of eyes on the sport. I'm saying that they're not in the same phase, I suppose, as the US, but they are progressing quickly. So it's going to be 5 years, I reckon. It could be
of this level of investment.
Yeah.
Liam, what's going to happen?
You're going to see a very different Saudi League next year, to be completely honest. I think it's going to be relatively prevalent in football discussion. I don't think it'll obviously be, be on everyone sort of talking at work, talking about, did you see the game last night? Ooh, Al Nassr versus Al Ettifaq. I'm not saying it's going to be that immediately, but, I think if you watch things like Sky Sports News, I think most roundups that you get in an hour on a Monday, I think will include the Saudi League. I think people will have an eye on it, and I think there'll be a bit of intrigue around it, unfortunately.
Look, can I ask you, is it like Gary Neville made a point like this when we was going to the World Cup in some of his World Cup previews about Qatar and that region of the world? Is it, or should it be the role of football, of Western football, to promote a more westernized model of civilization to the world via football by going over there and, I don't know, leading by example? I don't know if that's the right phrase. Well, I don't know if you know what I'm trying to say. Is it wrong to exclude them because of certain rules that they live by? Or do we go there to drag them along, if you will?
I think there's a few points.
Do you know what I'm trying to say there?
There's a few points I want to kind of cover. Is we need to be careful we're not being xenophobic, where Westerners are saying, well, just accusations against Arab
Oh
nations,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. Clearly going off the accusations that you see daily in the media about the next player's going. What does this mean for his career? What does this mean for this and that?
The thing is, it's we mentioned sports washing. It's the evidence behind it. So these big sporting events, for instance, let's just take Qatar, for instance. There was a lot of human rights issues, and then Qatar was basically held the World Cup. So it's if we start throwing sports washing accusations around, there need to be evidence kind of proven, or again, it comes into this xenophobic kind of accusation from the Arab nations. And I think it may have happened. I think City might have kind of said this: "Look, you're being xenophobic. Why are you just coming after basically Gulf states? Why not look at the bigger thing?" For instance, was the Chelsea situation with Russia influence. It's we've got to kind of be careful and kind of prove the sports washing aspects of it. The other side as well is Premier League. We're the highest spending league, outcompete all the other leagues twofold. So in essence, we're sort of doing what the Arabs, the Saudi Arabia league's doing now. They're putting a load of money in to kind of trying to compete, but are they ever going to compete with the Premier League? And we are just spending billions. So, and is it not a case where we're just trying to, we're kind of doing the same thing as them on a grander scale on there. We don't want to then to upset the apple cart in essence.
Don't. I mean, yes, I think it's very easy to sound xenophobic when talking about this because you don't want it to become us versus them. And I sort of agree with the fact of having, you can't, there's got to be a dialogue. There's got to be an open mindset from both parties if this is going to work and people are going to do business with each other. Liam, I want to get back to a word that gets bandied around a lot. And Luke just brought up the Premier League then, but hypocrite. Do we have a leg to stand on in terms of accusations thrown towards Saudi Arabia's involvement?
Depends what you're criticising them for, I think. I get the point in regards to hypocrisy and, you know, whataboutery that sort of gets used here, but I think what people's primary concerns are people are getting persecuted for who they are.
Yeah.
And I think you're allowed to say that if a country puts itself into the limelight, like Qatar did at the World Cup, like Russia did with the World Cup and the Olympics, like, you know, America does, and when people talk about the gun culture over there, you're allowed to criticize. You're allowed to shine lights on things that country may not want you to see.
Yeah, I agree.
That's not hypocritical. Yes, of course, every country will have its own issues, its own problems, but that shouldn't ever deter from standing up for people, which is what this is about. It's not about the country hurting a country's feelings. It's about holding people to account. If they want the best of something, like a tournament, like a Club World Cup, if they want that, Saudi Arabia, then understandably, people that go there should be able to feel safe. And that's not hypocrisy.
I've got a point to kind of ask you both, I suppose. How would you feel if someone came and bought your clubs and they came from a country that execute people?
Can I just stop you, Luke? Can I just stop you? Because you're going to ask this of us, hypothetically, when Man United are the one going through a takeover. So I'm not answering this hypothetical, Luke. What do you think if Qatar buys Man United?
Oh, so let me finish my point. So a club that executes people has racial kind of, well, from top to bottom issues, invades countries constantly, takes their oil money off them. What would you say to that? Would you be happy with that? Because America does that all the time. So why is it again? You can look at both sides.
Not the American government, though, is it? It's not.
Is it not?
What?
No.
Glazers aren't American government, Luke. Not in cahoots with the FBI and.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
The Cronkies aren't.
I wasn't
CIA.
talking about United. Obviously, it's on.
God forbid we talk about Man United.
No, if you're asking me, would I like a regime to own my football club at the expense of my morals for winning everything? The answer is, I'd like to think no. But then you look at a lot of Man City and Newcastle fans, and they're intolerable with it.
Yeah, they seem happy enough.
Yeah, but they're intolerable with some of the messaging that gets put out there and the defense that they do. It's like they weaponized a fan movement into defending things. So the truth is, Luke, is that it works because there are a lot of fans that are happy to go along with it. Now, whether me and Martin would, it's a drop in the ocean because it would have the effect, particularly at a club like Arsenal, where, no disrespect to Arsenal, but the fans are probably a bit more influenced than maybe a community club like Bolton, where it's a bit more smaller, we're a bit closer to things. Whereas Arsenal with a global fan base could be quite. If you weaponize something like that, it's dangerous. As is Man United. So mentioning Man United, Luke. Obviously, Sheikh Jassim. Talk to me about that.
Put me on the spot earlier, weren't you?
Well, you kind of brought it up.
You've got our beautiful American owners involved, and we've done nothing wrong.
Well,
the Glazers
point
are
before. If you look at America, again, who are them to point fingers? But back to United, kind of leading to new owners, I suppose.
All right, before we go on there, let's talk about state ownership for a second.
You nearly answered a question there.
I know I did. I know, but God, the umming and ahhing was absolutely killing me. I'm going to have to cut so much out. The state ownership, I do have a problem with that. I think there should be regulations about bottomless pits of wealth and unlimited amounts of cash flow available to a football club. How is, and as Liam put it, a community club like Bolton ever going to compete until they get their own state to fund them?
Can I interject as well with this? When we talk about American, by the way, why do Americans invest in British sport as opposed to American?
Clout? Banned sports portfolios?
It's essentially for this
gain more
reason
money.
that we talk about. They can put money into it. There's no caps. There's no wage restrictions. There's no perfect competition that they go for in America with drafts and things like that. The idea is that you can invest in a club like Bournemouth, turn them from a club that finishes 17th in the Premier League to the 8th, and sell them for triple the money. The pyramid is what encourages this. Everyone likes to point at the two lads at Wrexham, and yeah, you know what? It is a great story. They seem like nice enough guys, right? But make no mistake, if they take Wrexham from the conference to even the championship, they'll 10 times their return.
Yep.
And they're essentially leveraging the fact that they are celebrities to encourage sponsorship deals that Wrexham would never attract normally, to pump that money into the club. Unfair. I mean, I'd be shocked if they don't win League 2 next year, and I'd be shocked if they don't League 1 the year after.
Okay, so then, Liam, if you're saying that's fair to make for people to come in to
I
make
didn't say
money,
fair. Didn't say fair. I
Okay.
said that's why they're investing American sport.
So I think to move it back to kind of the Saudi aspects, then they're not really investing to make money. In essence, they'd probably allegedly do it for different
Now
reasons.
we're hitting the nail on the head with what state ownership, and this is the issue with state ownership because they're not. The end goal is different. It's not necessarily about winning. Yeah, winning's great, like, but it's not just about that. Really, it's the prestige, like the sponsorship deals that these players will do in the countries of where they've been signed. There's a lot more to it than simply just winning. You're right, Luke. You are right.
And I suppose again, like with the Gulf kind of countries, they are in essence still developing, and they're not at the stages, for instance, UK and US. So again, if they are investing in the sports aspect of it, it keeps developing the country, and country keeps obviously going bigger and bigger. More people invested, coming into the tourism obviously gets bigger, and I think that's kind of the end goal is the Gulf state countries want to be seen on the big boys table.
Ambition. If you want an idea of what, the subject matter is Saudi Arabia. So if we mention Saudi Arabia, if you look at Neom and the line and what Saudi Arabia is trying to do with that, it puts the whole football thing into perspective. The country's just mad with ambition as well. Like if anyone's not seen that, because I can't believe how underreported this is, and it is literally being built. Like it's not a pipe dream. Like we can't build HS2 here, but they're building essentially an indoor city, and it just gives you an idea of what's the grand idea of these countries.
And what the thing is, though, what is the harm of doing that? Is it a moral aspect from a Western point of view, where it's like, oh, they do bad things over there, so we don't want to develop them too much? Why can't they develop? Why can't they have the ambition? Why are we trying to kind of pause it?
Are they separate? Are they not separate things?
As in,
can if you do bad things, can you also do good things? Like no one's one thing or the other, are they?
No.
Yeah, I think morality is being questioned when, I don't know. Is it right to be questioning morality when when the line is so skewed in one way or the other?
Yes.
Yes, what?
Yeah, it's
yes,
all right. It's always all right to question it. It's always all right.
Yeah, I've seen the line that Saudi Arabia are building as well. The city that's like a wall that's about 15 miles long or something. I don't understand. I don't like state ownership. I don't like infinite wealth on one football club. It makes that it is an uneven playing field then, and you could argue that it already is. But there has always been that sort of competition when it was just when there wasn't state-funded clubs involved. It was who was willing to invest the amount of money that right.
Is it unfair though in the Premier League? Is it unfair? Because we have always, like you said, we always have a top four now. We have a top five, and they're still competing. Obviously, City are front runners every year, but we had a phase where Liverpool.
Do you think financial fair play needs to come into effect more across the board? Do you think them rules need to be run stricter, better?
Well, the other clubs, the other leagues seem to think so. They think it's an unfair advantage. The Premier League could have unlimited amount of wealth where they can come in and basically take all their best players. So do we look at across the board of all European leagues, and then, which I think they do. I think there is regulations, and this is where FFP comes in.
I don't know the sort of the fine details in it all, but I'm sure that the Premier League have their own, UEFA have their own with regards to European Championship, and FIFA have their own financial fair play rules. So, in conclusion, Liam, what shall we be thinking in terms of? We're not going to fix this tonight, so we're 2 for 2 in terms of fixing problems on this podcast. But what do you think needs to be put in place to? I don't know. Should there be more control if we're talking it from a Premier League point of view, or should we let Saudi Arabia, the PIF, run wild and see where it goes?
In terms of, if you take Newcastle out of the equation, in terms of the transfers this summer from English clubs, I don't really have an issue with anyone that bought all the transfer fees. I think a few people mentioned the Alan Saint-Maximin one as being potentially a bit high, but what was it, late 20s? I didn't think it was extortionately high. So, not really an issue on that side for me. In terms of Newcastle, obviously, the horse is bolted now. So it's very hard to do anything about that. Or Man City, by the way. So it's very hard, but I mean, obviously, in terms of ownership, not the 115 charges, alleged charges. Against Man City. So, in terms of that, there's nothing we can do. Now, do we then stop any others from coming in?
I don't think you can now.
No, I don't think you can. I think it'd be unfair to do it now, because then you're saying, well, it's okay for Abu Dhabi and for Saudi Arabia, but it's not okay for Qatar. It's not okay for Bahrain. It's not okay for
Scotland.
Other non-Gulf countries of the 160 odd countries in the world. I can't think of any of them right now. Canada to buy football clubs. So you can't now, I don't think. I think it would be unfair to do it now. I think, unfortunately, we are where we are.
Luke, what are your thoughts?
From a sports washing aspect, I think the solution is, if any of these clubs want to come and obviously purchase, let's just take, for instance, United's case. Shouldn't it be an incentive to set for Qataris to come out and say, look, we are addressing human rights issues, and this is what we're going to do about it. And then that's put on the forefront of everyone's kind of peripheral. And they're addressing it. So it's not kind of cloak and daggers where they're just kind of, again, sports washing. They're just buying the club to show, oh, well, we're going to invest and we're going to make United great again. Maybe it should be, okay.
Make United great again.
We should get some red caps with that on.
Green and
maybe
maybe
that's
Norwich ones with it.
They should be coming up and put it in the public's eyes of saying, look, this is how we're addressing it.
What do you think, Martin?
While I agree that the horse is bolted, I still don't like state ownership. I think more can be done in terms of regulation, whether that comes through financial fair play, whether that comes through, I don't know, changing the ownership structures of clubs. Speaking of which, we didn't touch on, but we can for a second, the Chelsea stuff that went on. So, if you're not aware, but Chelsea's owner, Todd Bowley, who heads up the Clear Lake Fund that owns Chelsea, one of the major investors to the tune of about 900 million, is the fellow who owns Newcastle, the head of the PIF, whose name I forgot, the great man himself. But, so, and then all of a sudden Chelsea are shipping out players left, right and centre to Saudi Arabia, to their pro league. Whilst it's like, the answer to this is, well, duh, because we can. I think more needs to be put in place to stop things like this going on, to stop the, Luke mentioned cloak and daggers, but to stop the shifty, seedy undertones of transfers going on like this and make things a lot more transparent.
But I think if the transfer fee's fair, then I mean, Saudi Arabia obviously want the players. These clubs want the players, and they obviously want to go there for the money. So this is part of it I don't actually have that much of an issue with, because if it's a fair transfer fee, then it kind of, I don't know. It's hard to. I think it's hard to take issue with it. These things obviously have to stand up to scrutiny. You know, in terms of your accounting and, you know, if it is a fair and equitable price to these players. But if they are fair prices, then the fair. I mean,
so you don't see a problem with one of Chelsea's main investors, so also funding basically what you would say other pots of money, investing into Chelsea from different pots.
Remind me who Arsenal's sponsor is.
Sponsors, Emirates and Visit Rwanda, which you should, because it's a lovely country.
Okay.
What's that got to do with it?
Well, who owns Man City?
Abu Dhabi.
So
I'm happy with you leading me down this road, by the way, but I'll keep answering your nonsense questions. Let's keep going.
no, what I'm sort of getting at is the horse is bolted. A lot of these.
You think our sponsors influence our transfer dealings?
I don't know.
There's been a lot of City to Arsenal and Arsenal to City players in the past 10 years, haven't they?
Yeah, because we've been crap.
Interesting.
For the audio listeners, there was a couple of raised eyebrows then, because no one else spirit. Right, that was hilarious. So once again, we are 2 for 2 on fixing any issues here. What I will do is thank you everyone for listening. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Luke, this week you're going to be busy picking our fantasy football team, is that right?
Well, I'm trying my best, yeah.
Oh, well.
All you can do.
That's all you can do. You fill us with confidence there. So the Fantasy League will be announced this week. The code will be up, so everyone please go and join. There's also going to be a Super 6 League for people to get involved with. And Liam's going to be picking our scores for that each week. He doesn't know it yet, but that's going to be his new role. And please like and subscribe, follow us wherever you are listening, and thank you for all your support. Boys, I'll catch you next week.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.